For a memorable shopping experience, you have to come to Bicester Village.
These look perfect. They are such a good length.
They have over 150 designer fashion and lifestyle boutiques, and I've never been anywhere quite like it.
This is going to be very tempting.
From personal shopping consultants to hands-free shopping, yes, they carry your bags for you, so chic. It's a 5-star service.
There are so many savings at Bicester Village. The reduction from the original price is just incredible.
And only an hour on the train from London. The next time I visit, I'm definitely trying out their personal shopping packages.
I feel so glamorous just slipping into these. I think I'll take them.
To enter a prize draw to win £500 worth of shopping at Bicester Village, follow the link in the description. T's and C's apply.
Thank you so much.
Your first failure is that you were rejected by every record label in the UK.
Yeah.
So you have left the army. You've recorded Back to Bedlam.
I hadn't, no, at this stage. No, I was doing concerts in London as I had when I was, my last job in the army was I was the Queen's ceremonial bodyguard based in London. And so I was the guy who rode beside her when she's in the carriage, you know, a group of us on horseback riding, protecting the Queen on horseback. And I would at night go and do concerts. And I found my manager that way, and he's still my manager to this day. And then I, through him, really had the confidence to say, okay, I'm doing it. Leave the army, chucked up a salute to my commanding officer, I gave him a demo and said, I'm out of here. And I'd got myself a kind of songwriter's deal with EMI Music Publishing, but I was searching for a record deal and I was being rejected left, right and centre. It was an amazing experience of going through all of them. I got really close with a company called Virgin, who have, you will have heard of, led by a man called Philippe Ascoli, a Frenchman. And it was exciting. I'd really been rejected by everyone at this stage. It was kind of getting down to, last-ditch moments. And Philippe Ascoli called me and said that he would like to sign me. And so they'd all gathered together, and I was in with my manager, but I was also in with the senior manager, who was Elton John's day-to-day manager. I was looked after by Elton John's management firm. So my manager and the senior manager who represents Elton had come in because this was now a big deal. And there they all were saying, you're going to be a star and we love your music and we love you. And then the marketing guy through this deal, and the paperwork was there. This was the kind of the only label in the UK that offered me a deal. The marketing guy said, we love you, but we have a problem with your speaking voice. Do you think you could do a different accent? And at that stage, my very Scottish manager stood up. Darren McKillop was his name, and said, "Right, let's get the fuck out of here," and said, "We're not signing on the basis of that. How ridiculous!" And so that was that deal gone. That was the last UK deal that didn't happen. And so I went to the South by Southwest Music Festival in Austin, Texas, flew out a keyboard player and another guitarist to come with me. We weren't playing in the main festival. We found ourselves playing in the fringes. And I was talking to those guys who had come out with me, and they said that I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand how this was the last throw of the dice. And there I was on the 20th floor, I think, of the Ramada Hotel on the fringes of the South by Southwest Music Festival, and playing to 20 people. And as I finished the last note of the song, a woman who'd had a tear tattooed under her eye, and wild dark hair, and a hat on, stormed over to me and said, "Hey, if you sign with me today, I'll send you a check for tomorrow. But I have a record label called Custard Records, and I want to sign you, and I want you to make the album of your dreams." And we went and got drunk together. I signed on the dotted line. She turned out to be a woman called Linda Perry from Four Non Blondes, the band, and she was the one who gave me that big break.
Amazing.
And I guess the point of that is Philippe Ascoli was French, didn't really come with the pettiness of the UK music industry, and Linda Perry was, I think her blood is Brazilian, but she's an American lesbian who with way more prejudices than I could ever experienced, and huge battles that again I can not possibly imagine. But the pettiness of the UK industry were below her.
What was the feedback you were getting apart from Virgin? Was that the feedback from the other labels that rejected you the same? He's just too posh.
Yes, that kind of thing. I think there's just a kind of cliche as to what we expect. And yeah, I think the music industry is very much about what's hip and hot and cool, and it's a tricky word when, as an adult, to deal with what is cool. It's like, what is the point of us as adults worrying about what's cool? Because music really is supposed to be about what makes us, what moves us, what makes us feel. It's a language in itself that you can sing to all around the world, and people who don't even understand or speak your language can still understand the emotion behind a song. And yet the music business is more about the smoke and mirrors of marketing, of what, as I say, is hip and of the moment, not necessarily about the simplicity or the honesty of a song and of a message behind a song. And so that's where I struggled, because look at me, I'm not cool.
I'm very interested in accents, and I'll tell you why. Because I grew up in Northern Ireland, but obviously I've never picked up the accent. And as a result of having this accent, I was mildly bullied at secondary school in Belfast.
Right.
Ended up getting a scholarship to a boarding school in England, where immediately I fitted in because I sounded right.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting relationship with my own voice and with how posh I might or might not sound, because although I'm deeply privileged in so many ways, I don't actually think I am that posh. It's just that I have this voice. But at the same time, I have this voice and I chose not to change it. I must have chosen at some point not to develop an accent, not to pick up the lilt.
I mean, to put on an accent is disingenuous in the first place, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, I could have gone on radio shows and interviews and tried to put it off, but I just don't think it would have been very convincing. And so mine I just apologise for and say it's my parents' fault and not mine.
But it's so interesting because I want to talk more about poshness. What does poshness mean to you?
Yeah, it's tricky. Well, it's different from snobism or snobbery, because you can call them a snob, and that's someone who thinks they're elevated from other people and looks down on other people. Posh is on the, well, what does it mean? I don't know. It's someone with this silly accent. It covers a range of different people, doesn't it? But you can't necessarily place where a person is from. It's, I don't know. How would you call it?
Well, I don't know. It's a perception that is more about the person perceiving, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because you had an experience of sounding posh in the 90s and early 2000s, and so did I. And I think it was a specific time in our culture where it was one of the worst things you could sound.
Well, I think it's an affliction, isn't it? That you could have a limp, you could have a lisp, or you could be posh. They're terrible afflictions burdens that we have to live with. And yeah, also it's probably the minority that doesn't get the, we're a minority that has prejudice that we're still unrecognised.
Yeah, I know you're joking, but I actually think there is something here, which is it's separate from privilege in the sense that...
Well, there's a real problem that you're a minority who are probably privileged too.
You're deeply privileged, I'm deeply privileged. And you've always made it clear that you acknowledge that. You've always, whenever I've heard you interviewed, been very grateful for the opportunities that have come your way. But that's... It's sort of unfair in my eyes for you to have been discriminated against purely because of how you sounded.
Yeah.
And purely because of a perception of what your background might have been when your demo tape was landing in these record companies. And I think we're at a time now where maybe we can say that.
Yeah, I would hope so. I employ a band and a crew from all corners of the country, and they take the mickey out of me and my accent from the get-go. But at no stage do they judge me or think that I'm or think that I look at them in any ways. We're friends and equals, and I respect them because they get me through so much. It's when you are judged in any way that it becomes that I'm uncomfortable with.
Did it remind you, these rejections, did it remind you of school?
No, I don't think so. I think that was a different experience.
You've said before that the backlash that you experienced afterwards did remind you of school.
That potentially reminded me of school because it just felt like bullying. Which, if we're honest, it was. It was a media-led backlash, which they had even... a selection of music journalists who got together and decided that I was the target that they were going to go for, and my manager was told about that. And those people, know who they are, and I talk about one of them in the documentary. And if you go through their press cuttings, I've just put a book out actually, and I put all the negative press in one thing, and you can just see the same names again and again, and it's so petty and it's so puerile that it's just basically just like school bullying. And so that's what I felt about it at the time. I was really lucky as well because, I have a very close-knit family and I have close-knit friends. And so you could say this is just really petty and it's bullying. It's bizarre to be experiencing it as an adult, but that's kind of what the music business is about. I find the music industry quite small-minded. My job is a touring musician. I think I'm a touring musician. I'm just also happen to be in the petty-minded music industry at the same time.
Thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the full episode of How to Fail on your preferred podcast platform, and also be sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates.